Thanks so much for joining us on Across the Board on Pass the Wire TV. I'm Sarah Strackhouse. Make sure to follow our social handles. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and of course on Pass the Wire TV, YouTube, passthewire.com. We are so excited to get started. I'm here with Frank Zaccanelli and of course Jon Stettin. This is going to be an awesome show.
I'm really happy to be doing the show again with you, Sarah. We had a little history back in the day with a news show that did very well, but this one's going to do better because we have the founder and the brains of the operation on this show, and his name is Jon Stettin. And he's in Florida, and he's ready to roll. Jon, how are you?
I'm well, and thank you both. And I'm the one that's actually thrilled to be working and on the show with you two. So I'm used to riding solo a lot, so now I feel like I have a team here with me. So I couldn't be happier.
Well, I'll say before the show, we had a beautiful press release today. And you can pick up that press release, again on passthewire.com. It's all over the place, though. Las Vegas has picked it up. Everybody around the country's picked it up. And we're pretty excited about the initial reach that we've been able to get with a very nice press release. So the press release is posted also on passthewire.com, so you can get it. But today is really a gigantic kickoff day for us. And this show is going to be a really interesting show because we're going to talk about everything that's going on in the world of sport. And we're crossing over with, thoroughbred racing being our main calling card still, but into the sports world, because that's really what Pass the Wire is now going to become. It's going to become a full service, online platform. And so I couldn't be happier to be involved. Nice to have Sarah with me and Jon. So Sarah, why don't we start the show? Why don't we tell people what we're going to talk about today? And we're really excited about it.
Well, today we have some hot takes, and of course we have the analysis with Jon and Frank, and we are live in the Dallas studio. So we are going to be talking about Stephen A. Smith, a little bit LeBron and Lakers, and of course the controversial comments that came out there. We are going to be talking about the U.S. men's national team World Cup, what happened there. We are going to be diving into Dave Portnoy and, of course, that whole conversation around Barstool Sports, as well as Caitlin Clark and what's happening there with the WNBA. So first, I say let's hop into the conversation surrounding Stephen A. Smith. He said some very controversial words about the Lakers team and white players taking the lead. So I want to start with you, Frank.
Well, actually, I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Jon. Jon wrote a great article on this. And Jon, why don't you open it up, with what was in your article and, why you wrote the article that you wrote.
Well, I wrote the article because I was really taken back by what he said. And I thought that he deviated from what he's supposed to do. I don't really think that what he said was basketball analysis. I think it was maybe personal, maybe a bit racial, or a lot racial, but it wasn't basketball analysis. You don't win basketball games because of the color of your skin. The basket does not know what color the hand is that hit the shot. It just doesn't. You analyze a basketball team not by the color of the players, but by their ability. You could either shoot or you can't. You could either play or you can't. You could either rebound, lay up, assist, play defense, or you can't. And I think history shows that there have been, great basketball players from all different walks of life. And now even you have international players that are making impacts. And Frank, you were one of the people that kind of started that whole trend. So as well as anybody that, color of your skin's got nothing to do with whether or not you can play the game.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a different tact. I watched an interview yesterday on the Will Cain show. He actually does that from Dallas. But Will was involved with ESPN, Sarah. He was on E60, I think it was. And then he did some work on First Take. He's not a dumb guy. He's a really nice guy. but I watched the interview that he did with Stephen A., and it's just a repeat of more of the same stuff. I'm going to look at this thing a little bit differently, and I'm just going to take a minute and a half on this. But Stephen A. understands basketball the whole way. He was recruited at Winston-Salem State University, which is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, on a basketball scholarship by a Hall of Famer and one of the greatest college coaches in the history of the game, Big House Gaines, Clarence Big House Gaines. He's in the Hall of Fame. He won 800 in, I think, 22 games. Earl the Pearl Monroe, for those of you that are big, NBA guys, played for him back in that era when no black players could play in the ACC. So there's a lot of history there. And Stephen A. is not a dumb guy when it comes to basketball. He was on a scholarship. He hurt his knee, and then he kind of, followed other paths that he's taken. As far as Stephen A. Smith's concerned, he's probably at the top of the heap in the sports world in terms of his exposure. I mean, this guy's making $40 to $50 million a year, and he's making so much money, I don't think he knows how much money he's got. So, it's not about money. I can't believe this is about clickbait. I can't believe it's about any of that. He made a big mistake here, and I'll tell you why he made a mistake. First of all, the guy that they signed that created all this, Walker Kessler, is going to be the 8th best player on the team, maybe this year, but for sure next year. They've signed Sexton. They've signed Grimes. Anybody that follows, these are 2 black guys. They're not going to load the team up with white players. That's not going to happen. And Kessler is going to become the 8th best player on that team based on the fact that I think they're going to bring Kuminga in, and they're going to start bringing some other guys in. They signed Looney. So this isn't about trying to create a white team. There's nothing white and black about this. I don't even know where all this got started. But the problem now is a lot of the race baiters have taken this and they run with it. And, I think that Stephen A. is way above that. I gave you his background in sports and Clarence Big House Gaines and everything else, but he's probably the number one sports guy on television. And I don't completely understand why he would, take that position, because Kessler is not going to be the 3rd best player on that team. He's not going to be the 5th best player on that team. Luka Doncic is one of the 4 best players in the NBA. He happens to be white. 2 of the best 4 players in the NBA are white, because the Joker is a white guy, okay? So, I don't really understand what this white and black thing is really all about. I never looked at it that way. I certainly didn't look at it when I was running an NBA team. If you brought down Martians and they were green and they were from planet, I don't know, Pluto. Is Pluto still a planet?
I mean,
John, is Pluto still a planet?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a planet or not.
It is.
But the fact of the matter is, if they were green and they could play, I'd have signed them. And so would everybody else.
You signed Nowitzki.
Well, yeah, he's not green and from Pluto.
No.
Okay. So the thing that I want to say about Stephen A., everybody's on him. He tripled down yesterday with Will Kane, is that I think he's got to be a little bit more responsible, because he opens the door for a lot of these people that have nowhere near his integrity and character, have nowhere near his knowledge. And one of the things, and one of the reasons I do this, and I'm doing this now with Jon, is Jon not only is the best handicapper in the world, he's an unbelievable author. Well, Stephen A. is a great author. Anybody that can write that well is extremely intelligent. So I think he blew it. I think he had more responsibility to not do that because of the aftermath, and now he's tripling down on it. Stephen, come on the show. We want to talk to you. Again, I'm not calling you out on anything other than this one was a mistake, and it's a mistake because Kessler's going to be the 8th best player. You got Luka Doncic, and you got a really good team now trying to be built underneath him, and that's what they're trying to do. And the last thing I'm going to say is the GM for the Lakers, Rob Pelinka. He was involved, if anybody wants to get in the race on this one, he was involved with categorically the culturally blackest team in the history of college basketball with Michigan's Fab Five. Okay? He was on that team. So there's nothing race about any of this other than they signed a guy who sooner or later is going to be coming off the bench and be in an 8-man rotation, be the 8th player.
Well,
let me say something.
Yeah.
Let me say one thing. Your answer, Frank, while makes a ton of sense and brings a lot of light onto it, it begs a question. If Steven is all that you said, and I have no doubt. I mean, I've watched him for a long time. I respect him. I think he speaks his mind. I think he's spot on a lot of times. Sometimes I don't agree with him. Sometimes I do, but I think he's always got a good rationale. Begs the question, one, why did he say it if he knows better and knows the game better than that? And the other thing that comes to my mind when he said it, and another reason I wrote the article was because, when he said it, it reminded me of something that I witnessed years ago. Before there was a cancel culture, we saw somebody get canceled for saying something that I would say parallels what Stephen Smith said, and it was really primarily a horse racing character named Jimmy the Greek Snyder. Jimmy the Greek Snyder, during an interview or having lunch somewhere or something, made some comments that black athletes had an advantage over white athletes, and I'm not quoting him directly, but this was the gist of what he said, because slave owners bred them to the biggest, and they had better genes to perform better than white people. And I think it was about an hour, maybe 2 hours tops. CBS canceled him before canceling was even a thing. He was fired. I don't think we ever heard from him again. He's still probably passed away by now, but he's been MIA since that 2-hour window since he made that statement. But Stephen Smith makes a statement that's equally, no pun intended, off color, and really, really no ramifications except some people calling him out. So that's kind of why I wrote it. And agreeing with you, I just don't know where it came from.
Well, and you said something in your article that kind of hit home. You said if it was the reverse situation, like Jimmy the Greek, the newscaster would probably be unemployed before dinner. So that kind of struck a chord, I think.
I believe that.
And I want to know, what does this mean for bettors? Do you think that it's something that people should take into account, the fact that he said that? Is that something to believe, or is it?
No.
What does it mean?
No, it means nothing.
Okay.
And I'll close the segment with this, and I'll give Jon the last word. But I'll close my piece of the segment with this. I happen to know a little bit about this. I was the president, GM, and minority owner at the time in 1998 when Don Nelson and I and his son drafted Dirk Nowitzki in the 1998 draft, and we traded for Steve Nash. Now, both of those guys are white dudes, okay? But let me give you the distinction. The distinction is Steve won 2 MVPs and Dirk won 1 MVP in the total league. So I just don't think that's race. I mean, I've heard people go back now, well, guys, the Celtics back in the 60s. I don't care about any of that. What I care about is Stephen A. Smith has to have more responsibility because of what the aftermath is. There's many problems in our society now. And here's an interesting thing, too. Stephen A. Smith has crossed over into politics, and he should know this. There are many problems in our country where it's been divided by race. A lot of people want to blame Trump. A lot of people want to blame the Democrats. There's enough blame to go around all the way around. But I just don't think it has any place in this. And again, you're not going to have 3 white guys that are going to be the 3 best players. Kessler's going to be, and no one has pointed this out, he's going to be the 8th best player on that team probably by this year, but certainly by next year. So, Jon, I'll give you the last word on this.
Well, that's why you built the Mavericks, because you recognize that about the players. To get back towards my expertise and Sarah's question, will it affect lines or betting or wagering? No, not even a little bit, in my opinion. And I'll tell you why. Lines are moved, markets are moved. That stuff gets moved by smart money and smart bettors. The small time wagers that are affected and look at things like that and say, hey, well, now the Lakers aren't going to be that good because Stephen A. Smith said it. They don't move lines. If anything, the sharp money and the big money will capitalize on any little deficit or edge that they create by following that way. But in the end, it'll level out. It's not important enough, and as Frank pointed out, it's not going to be meaningful enough to their performance on the court to really impact the line.
Right. So Stephen A., we're going to send this to you. Come on the show. We want to have you. And
Stephen Smith.
Stephen A. Yeah,
Stephen A.
Stephen A. All right. Go ahead,
All right.
Sarah.
And of course, if you're watching in the audience, make sure that you are commenting below. Make sure that you're asking us questions. We're happy to get back to you. We always want to hear from you. So we are moving on to our next conversation that surrounds the U.S. men's national team in the World Cup. We lost 4-1 to Belgium. Frank, I want to toss it to you. What are your thoughts on what happened there?
Well, I think it's one of these things that happens every once in a while where expectations exceed the logic.
Yeah.
Right now, we're a host nation, and I don't think any World Cup is going to be as successful as this one as it relates to attendance and some of the things that are going on in the United States. I mean, I think it's really, really, really a great deal. I think that they've done a great job, FIFA, about utilizing the infrastructure that we have with all of the stadiums and everything else. We didn't have to do anything as it related to that. They're all built, they're all there. It's a systemic problem here. I've read about the fact that, well, let's get rid of the coach. You don't need to get rid of the coach. The coach was good. He's from Argentina. He knows his stuff. What's got to happen is there's got to be a removal of the hierarchy that is now running USA Soccer and the board of directors that are governing this, because no matter what, it didn't take anybody. It could have been your first soccer game you ever watched in your life. And in the 15th minute of the game, you knew that Belgium was a way better team. They had better players.
Way better connection.
They had their system was better. Our guys just didn't have, Sarah, the oomph, the talent, the this, the that. And that all starts in our children's programs all the way up through the ranks in high school and in college. It's really a development system that's the problem. And I think that if Donald Trump wants to really get involved in soccer, he should clean house and he should get some new people in there that are going to build the feeder system, because that's what is causing this massive hole that you find out when they're playing really good teams. Yep. Belgium's a really good team. They got elite players everywhere. God forbid if they played France or Spain.
Yeah. Well, and I grew up playing soccer in America. People play so many different sports. Kids are encouraged to play different sports, try different sports. Whereas in Europe, everyone grows up playing soccer, football immediately. They grow up on the streets kicking the ball, playing soccer. So it's completely different. If you look at the touch of a soccer player on the Belgium team versus our first touch, it's a completely different game. It's a much faster game. So I think it was tough.
Well, explain to them. You kind of glossed over it. Sarah played Division I soccer,
yep,
and then played semi-pro soccer.
I did.
All right, so
I played for a long time, and you watch these games and you start to see where different athletes stand out, and especially when America, we have a great team and we have great forwards, we have great outside mids, we press really well, but you start to notice the difference when these other teams, these other European teams really step forward, have that first touch. It matters late into the game. It matters at the top notch. So. Like you said, at the first 15 minutes, they scored in 12 minutes?
Well, but they could have had 6 goals in the first half.
So it was tough,
and
even with our players.
Well, we couldn't control the ball,
yep,
but it gets back to, in my opinion, a systemic problem. That team did as good as we could expect them to do. They're just not good enough. If we're going to be good enough, some of our better athletes have to play soccer, and it has to start at the youth level. It has to be what Sarah talked about as it relates to, this feeder system. And, the coach is not responsible for that. That's all about the system makers and the executive board and the president and all these people. I could name them. I'm not even going to waste everybody's time with naming them because they all should go. John?
I'll tell you what really stuck out to me, and I'm like a lot of other people from the U.S. I'm really getting into soccer now, more than ever. Although one of my favorite athletes was a soccer player, Zlatan. I always mess up his last name. Zlatan did one of my favorite things in sports ever when he went to play for the LA Galaxy, and LeBron James sent him a gift and sent him a signed jersey. And this guy takes the jersey, signs it, his name, and sends it back to LeBron. So I'm like, I love this guy. I had never even seen him play. And then I started watching him, play in some of his highlights, and unbelievable athlete. But what struck me about everything that was soccer in the tournament this year, yes, USA losing was a disappointment, but I saw something that I have never really seen in sports, and even when you talk about the Super Bowl and the World Series and whatever you want to talk about, and it reminded me of the days when a heavyweight fight was like an event that everybody was gathered around the radio listening to every blow before it was even on TV, before pay-per-view. And I'll tell you why. I use in my car navigation, I like to use the Apple phone, so I use Waze as my navigation. I didn't even realize it, but I'm driving the car, goal coming up on Waze. Never saw anything like that. You could be riding around during the Super Bowl. You don't hear field goal, touchdown pass. You didn't hear any of that. You saw so many highlights jumping up on Waze, and then I switched to other navigation systems just to see, and it was there too. I was like, wow, this is huge. So I think that even though USA lost, I think it just brought so much more awareness to what a great and exciting and passion-filled game that soccer is, Well,
John, not to interrupt you. Do you know how many people watch the World Cup final? Probably 5 to 6 times which watch the Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah. No.
I mean, this is the world sport. This is it.
Yeah, and just the excitement of goal and just the unity of everybody rooting for their teams and rooting for their country. It was, to me, somebody who was relatively new to that sport, it was just beyond impressive. And I really think that even though they lost, that the way it was handled and the way it was marketed and presented, I think is going to go a long way in making it a much popular sport in the U.S., which I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Frank and Sarah, I think that was the intention a couple of years ago when the LA Galaxy and those teams kind of entered into the picture, and it never really did take off. But I think now, it might, because I think it was really marketed.
I'll give you the last word, Sarah.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's just exciting that there's so much, there's so much excitement here around it, where culturally it's not necessarily part of our culture. So you're absolutely right. I think it was really exciting. Before we go to break.
Now hold on. Stay tuned in the next couple of days, because we're going to give you some suggested picks on the games that are remaining.
I was going to say France or Morocco. Who's the favorite?
Well, no, France is the favorite in every game they're going to play, but that's the hardest game they're going to play. I believe it's going to be harder than Argentina, and I believe it's harder than Spain. Okay. But let's not give too much away. But yeah, it's France's tournament to lose.
I have some opinions and creative wages structured around Argentina, but we'll get to that when we talk about it.
Yeah, hold the phone for 2 days.
I was going to say, make sure you follow us again on all of the socials, Pass the Wire TV, YouTube, passthewire.com, and you can find out some sneak peeks from Jon and Frank and get some of their thoughts. And of course, we are going to go to break, but stay tuned, because afterwards we're going to go into Caitlin Clark and all that surrounds that conversation. So we'll be right back.
Some horses are remembered, other horses are passed down like an heirloom. He's the kind of horse that lives in stories, each better than the one before, hardened like a diamond and equally brilliant. He ran 3 straight years at the highest level, and he himself was elite.
Putting on a show in the Preakness. Who's it gonna be? It's gonna be National Treasure.
National Treasure would not be denied. National Treasure wins the Pegasus World Cup. In the blink of an eye has opened up a 5-length advantage. So 1-horse race. National Treasure.
There's a brilliance in the way he moved and a tenacity in how he finished. By quality road with a wealth of family, and he raced like he knew it. National Treasure, the key to quality.
All right, thanks so much for joining us back. We are going to talk about Caitlin Clark. So there's so much conversation that surrounds this. If you're not familiar with the story, she has had a number of hits against her in the WNBA in the games. Chennedy Carter, Marina Mabrishov, Alyssa Thomas, all of these incidents have come up. And of course, Jon Stettin, horse racing handicapper and professional bettor, has written it again, published a great piece last week about it on Past the Wire, the $1 billion blind spot. And it's not about necessarily just the foul, which of course we are going to talk about, especially with a former Dallas Mavericks owner here, but we are going to say, we are going to go into some of the details about Jon talking about the numbers, the millions of dollars behind what this means, the viewership, all of this breakdown. So, Jon, I'm going to let you kick it off. You talked about viewers before Caitlin Clark and after, 462,000 viewers versus after 1.32 million. So I'm going to let you take it away.
Well, you know, that the numbers don't lie, and the numbers are why, in part, not entirely, because I think you've got some, moral and integrity issues underlying here. But, the numbers alone just make it difficult to comprehend why the league handles this situation the way that they do, and why they fail to protect their most valuable asset, and not only protect their most valuable asset, but capitalize and market and promote their most valuable asset, and underlying to that also, promote, integrity and fair game. And when I say fair game, I mean by, making the right calls on some of these, fouls. I mean, they're allowing this girl to get beat up out there to the point where, I mean, it's just, in my opinion, it's disgraceful, not acceptable, a very bad look for the league, very bad look for a lot of players. I would call it almost bullying. It's just such a missed opportunity for them to really promote their game and their league, and really, rise her up instead of almost the other players. And she's making all the other players more money. She's elevating every player in that league, and they're abusing her for it. I mean, it's ignorance at its highest level. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, and I keep thinking about the Sophie Cunningham meme, the point now that has gone viral. I mean, every conversation keeps coming back to this. And Frank, as the former president, GM, and minority owner of the Dallas Mavericks, if she was on your team, if she was a part of your franchise, how would you handle this?
Well, Sarah, I don't think this is a franchise issue. I think this is a league issue. And I think that the commissioner of the WNBA, who spent 32 years at Deloitte, as I guess she started out as a bean counter and then worked her way to the top, I don't think is doing a very good job here. Kathy Engelberg, I think is her name, Kathy Engelberg. She's not doing a very good job. And one of the big problems in the WNBA, and a lot of people don't know this, they don't have full-time referees. It's kind of like, it's not like the NBA, it's kind of like college where they circle these, referees around. The refereeing in the WNBA is awful. It's inconsistent, and it's not good. And this Kathy Engelberg, who had a chance now to, as the commissioner, to lay down the law about what happened to Caitlin Clark with the punching in the neck incident, right, by Alyssa Thomas. She had a real chance to make a big deal about this, and she didn't. She gave her a 1-game suspension. Here's the analogy I'm going to use. In 1996, Tiger Woods, who had won 3 amateur titles, U.S. amateur titles, more than anyone else in the history of the game, turned pro. And Nike signed him to a $40-some-odd million contract, a big contract. And it was the biggest by far at that time for anybody that was, in the golf world. Here's an African-American kid that's coming in. He was very well known, but he's coming in. And I was around a lot of the golfers at that time. Like I said, Freddie Couples, who was my next door neighbor. I spent a lot of time around golf with Mickelson and all those guys. And they were on the sidelines applauding this African-American guy who came into golf, because all that it did, a rising tide raises all boats. Remember that. A rising tide raises all boats. Purses went up, contracts with sponsors went up. All he did was make the PGA a better sport for the players.
Unlocked a new audience.
I hate to say it, but that's what Caitlin Clark is doing, I think. And the problem is, I don't think the players are accepting it like the golfers accepted the Tiger Woods thing. Now, that's where the parallel ends. Tiger Woods is the greatest golfer of all time. Caitlin Clark's not the best basketball player of all time. She's good. She happens to be white. I think there's a real disdain, but there are also some cultural issues that are there. It's not just another black and white issue, even though that plays in. There's some cultural issues. There's some lifestyle issues there. She's a white heterosexual woman.
Yeah.
And there, whether anybody wants to talk about it or not, there's cultural issues that are involved here. So I think when I try to analogize this, it's a Tiger Woods analogy that she is just going to raise the boats. So they should just stay in their boats, applaud it, and go to the bank. I mean, that's the way that I see this thing. Attendance is up. Contracts are up. The new WNBA Players Association deal, I think, is redone and it's better. I just, I think it's ignorance, and I think that it's not very smart.
Yeah. John, your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, we're pretty much aligned on this. I think it's everything that Frank said and everything that I said combined. I do see the cultural issues there. I see the financial issues there, and I see tremendous failure by the league, the commissioner, and the ignorance of the players just not to recognize what she's doing for all of them, while they're taking just ridiculous, cheap shots at her game after game after game. You mentioned, Frank, they've got rotating referees. They need a rotating police force for the way they're treating this girl on the court.
Yeah. Well, it's not as direct as the Stephen A. Smith quote about white and black. Like I said, there's cultural things here, but I think the WNBA commissioner, the bean counter from Deloitte, needs to go. And I don't know who controls that now. I don't know how they control it. She hasn't done a good job at all. Some people are saying, she's doing a pretty good job. I don't see it. But the fact of the matter is, you've got a golden goose. Don't cook it. Yeah. Don't cook it. Make some money, build the league, do some great things. You got to remember something. Larry Bird and Magic Johnson in 1979, a white guy and a black guy saved the NBA. They saved the NBA. In 1979, when Magic put on that unbelievable performance, playing all 5 positions, Kareem was hurt, that final game was tape delayed. How about that one?
Yeah.
Tape delayed, 1979. Were you born?
No, I
Oh, all right. All right. Don't comment on that.
Okay.
Then. All right, but it was tape delayed.
Sarah,
And so the combination of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, they saved the NBA. They created the platform for Michael to take it over. And then all the players, and LeBron has done a great job with that too. He's taken it as far as he can go. So I just think it's a big miss by the commissioner. And I think it's a gigantic miss by the players. And I don't want this to be another black and white issue. I think there's more to it than that.
Sarah, you asked Frank, and you were right to ask Frank and not me what he would do if that was his team. But I'm gonna just offer up what I would do. Okay.
For sure.
All right. And this is why Frank built the Mavericks, and I haven't built anything. I built a nice sandwich the other day that was pretty impressive.
The pick six king.
No, the pick six king, past the wire.
Yeah.
Come on.
But not an NBA franchise. But here's how I handled that. Okay. I'm like, I huddle my team up. If I'm the coach, I say, listen, this is not acceptable, and the league is not helping us. I take my player that I can afford to lose the most. I say, okay, you're gonna rectify this. You're going in there, and the next opportunity on a rebound, when somebody's coming down with the ball, raise your elbow, hit them in the nose, put their nose in between their eyes. You're going to get suspended. They're probably going to make an example out of you, but they're going to think twice about doing this to Caitlin tomorrow night or the next night. And if you know what, the next player, you're up next. If they don't get the message after this one, you're the next one.
All right.
Okay, that is
no, hockey.
Hockey.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a terrible idea. So let me go on record as saying that's a terrible idea. I would never do that. It's fine.
It's the only way I know how to fix it.
It's ultimately not going to solve anything. The only thing that's going to solve it are the referees and the commissioner. And the players being talked to by their union to explain to them what they're doing. Explain to them, this is not what you should be doing.
Yeah, well, and I feel like we could debate this all day. Who's at fault? Is this an ethics thing? Is this the WNBA problem? Is this a player problem? Is this a culture problem? But I want to go back to the numbers. And again, John, your article, you talked about the player vote. Can you break down what that means for our audience? Clark was named the All-Star starter for the third consecutive year, what the player vote means and what these numbers tell us.
Well, they tell you clearly that she's the star of the league. She's the lure of the league. And like Frank said, and I used it in my article, rising waters raise all boats. She is the biggest asset that league and every player in that league has right now. And the numbers clearly look at the before and after. Average view is 462, 1.3. I mean, sellouts 45, 151. They just across the board. She's elevated everything, every salary, every level of interest that you can. And for the players not to recognize that, and I'm not saying give her preferential treatment. Don't cheap shot her every chance that you get.
Right. Well, let me close with this. I want our producer, Jim, to find the player rep in the association, the WNBA Players Association. They have a president. Let's get the president on the show.
All right, let's do it.
That's the person I'd like to talk to. I'd like to say, listen, what are you doing? Have you talked to your players? This is common sense. And see if we can get whoever that person is, I ought to know, but I don't know. That the president of the Players Association of WNBA, I think, could have a real hand in this as well.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get into our next segment, of course, we are going to get into the Pass the Wire bread and butter. We're going to talk about horse racing betting. We're going to talk about Dave Portnoy, who, of course, is the founder of Barstool Sports. But we are going to have a quick break. We'll be right back, and we'll see you soon.
Go.
All right. Thanks for sticking with us. And of course, we want to hear from you. So make sure you comment, like, share, and send us a DM if you have questions. We'll try to get back to you. We will get back to you and we'll answer as much as we can. But we are going to dive right into the heart of horse racing. Right now, there's a big conversation, especially after Jon's publication on July 4th called The Illusion of Exposure. Make sure to go to pastthewire.com and you can read that full article. Is Dave Portnoy actually good for the game? So Mike Rapoli, one of the most powerful owners of the horse racing world, says yes. Jon, I want your take. What do you think?
You know, of the three topics and three articles that we spoke about, this one for me was the most challenging and the most interesting. And I'll tell you why. You know, it's a very hard question to answer. I mean, you know, the obvious answer is, of course, he's good for the game. He's got millions of followers. He's got a huge platform. He's, you know, a polarizing figure, very loud, very boisterous, kind of in your face kind of guy. Talking about horse racing. Yeah, absolutely. He's good for the game. But take a step back. First, let's define what does good for the game actually mean. Okay. Now, generally speaking, any press is good press. Okay. I get that concept. But in a game like horse racing that is at a crossroads and has issues, it has a declining handle, it has a declining fan base, it has bad perception about being on the level. What does Portnoy's platform amplify? Many of those things. I'm never making another bet with these CAWs. Oh, this game is rigged. Oh, you can't even bet on horses anymore. I don't know that that is actually good for the game, because when I get to the nuts and bolts and say, okay, what does good for the game? It's a great phrase, okay? What does it mean? To me, good for the game means promoting the game in a manner that grows the game, makes the game get back to where it was, not continues or feeds the declining handle or the declining fan base. And a guy with 3.8 or 4 million, or how many million followers he's got, maybe more than that, out there saying the game is rigged, you can't bet on it. I don't know that you could just automatically say that publicity is good for the game. You can argue against it being good for the game. You know, you want to be good for the game, point out the good. I'm not saying I'm the last one to say avoid bringing up the bad issues, because they are out there. But I don't think that you can do that and say, are you good for the game? Am I good for the game? I don't know the answer to that, because I bring up a lot of problems in the game. I think I'm good for transparency in the game. I think I am good for calling it the way it is and making people aware of what they're actually dealing with, betting into, betting against, and finding those edges in a difficult environment. But good for the game, is Portnoy good for the game? I don't know that that's as simple as people make it. And, you know, I read some of the comments on the article, and, you know, of course he's good for the game. Look how popular he is. Well, maybe that's exactly why he's bad for the game, because look what he is saying. He's not driving handle up. He's not driving fans to the game. If anything, I can argue he's probably driving some away from the game, because he's got that big platform. They hear what he says, they see what he says, and like, he don't want to bet on horses. Why would I? So I think it's a complicated issue with many layers, and I'd love to have a conversation with him about, you know, if he thinks he's good for the game. I'd love to talk to Mike.
Well,
Mike,
we're going to reach out to him. I got some guys in Boston working on that now. So, Dave, if you're watching, we're going to send this to you. We want to talk to you. First of all, the guy is my business hero. Now, Sarah, why is he my business? Not my business hero. Ross Pro and Ross Pro Jr. are my business heroes. Yeah. But why is he one of my business heroes?
Because he's turned something.
He sold a company for $551 million and bought it back for $1. Okay, Jon, do I have that right? Sold it for $551 million and bought it back for $1. I mean, right there, he's in the Hall of Fame with me. So right. We'll start right there. Look, with Dave Portnoy, he's built a monster with Barstool. You know, in some ways, we're competing a little bit with him. It's not a fair fight right now, but, you know, give us a little bit of time. But no, I believe in the final assessment, he's good for the game because he brings awareness to the game. I will tell you something, John, that I told you privately, and Sarah, I've never told you. The biggest hit that racing took over the last 3 years is when Bob Baffert, the face of racing, got suspended for what people perceived that he was cheating. And all I heard, this is not from John or any of his people, but all I heard was, see, I told you this guy's crooked. I told you this is why the guy wins all the time. He's doping his horses. He's doing this. He's doing that. Okay? The bottom line is, when it all washed out, it was a veterinarian mistake, but he's responsible.
It was an ointment that is legal today.
Right, but it wasn't legal at the time, and he got suspended. And the long and short of it is, it was a gigantic blow to racing that everybody who are the naysayers out there, and they're upset because they go to the track and lose $1,000 and it's everybody else's fault. The bottom line is, racing is crooked. Look, just take a look at that. So there's a lot of issues there. I'm not qualified like John to talk about racing. Let's just start right there, and I never will be. But I think Dave Portnoy is probably more good than bad for the game because of the following that he has. He invests in horses. He's a self-proclaimed, major gambler. And, I don't see anything in the mix that would tell me that, he's really a problem and we got to get rid of him. Yeah, he's like anybody else. He has opinions. And sometimes I've noticed Dave Portnoy's opinions contradict his opinions from last week. That is one thing that I have seen. So, I would say, again, anybody who sold something for $551 million and bought it back for $1, congratulations, you're in my Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of talked about exposure does not necessarily equal growth. I just want you both to define in your own words growth. Is it the viewers? Is it bettors? Is it money in the sport? Do you think that Portnoy is going to grow those separate metrics? What do you think?
John?
I think that's where the problem lies, really. Mm-hmm. I think that the answer to that question so far is no. He hasn't grown the handle. He hasn't grown the customer. The customer in horse racing, like it or not, is the bettor. It's not the fan. It's a different animal. The bettor is the customer. It's a gambling game. Racing has refused to embrace that for longer than I can remember. But that's who their customer is, and it's about time they realize that. And to be good for the game, you've got to increase the customers. And we're losing customers daily, weekly, monthly. And he's been involved for the past year or two quite vocally. So I think that, if we want to go to the numbers, we brought up, that he sold the company for $550 million, bought it back for $1.50. That's a brilliant business thing. I agree. Puts him right in the Hall of Fame. I don't know that anybody's ever made a better business deal than that. But if you look at his numbers on racing, he's out there tweeting. He's out there at Saratoga. He's out there talking about racing all the time. And the numbers are tanking despite that. So if we're going to take the position that, follow the money, follow the numbers, by that metric, he's not been good for the game.
All right. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to have him on the show. We're going to work hard to have him on the show, to let him defend everything. But in the long run, I think racing has a lot of issues that John has talked to me about, Sarah, and, over and over and over. And again, I'm not patronizing my partner, but he's the best thoroughbred horse racing person on the planet Earth. There's nobody that has more knowledge. There's not a better handicapper. He cares about the game. He cares about the equine athletes in the game, cares deeply about them. And that'll be a whole nother show. So, Dave, if you're listening, we're going to send it to you. Come on the show and let's talk about it.
We'll let him yell a little bit. He likes to yell, so he can yell.
All right.
All right, good. We'll just make sure that his mic is checked.
Yeah, well, we'll check his mic, John.
All right. Well, before we wrap, I want just one final word. What is your hot take for today? John, we'll start with you.
We're going to be bringing a lot of interesting perspectives going forward. It's going to be the kind of show that you don't want to miss a single episode of, because you never know what you're going to hear, and we're not afraid to talk about anything and give our honest, unfiltered opinion towards it.
Right. Well, my take is that this is one of 5 shows we're going to do. This is a news show. So we're not giving you, handicapping opinions on sports on this show. But there's a lot of shows to come, and they're all going to be done weekly. And we're going to flood the market with content that we don't think is out there. So my take is this is a really good kickoff. I hope that people like it. We want to grow Past the Wire 100 times bigger than it is today. And we're going to get into a diverse scheduling in terms of not only horse racing now, but all the major sports. And we're going to be involved in the thoroughbred yearling syndication world in the Keeneland sale in September. So there'll be more details to follow there. So I'm just really glad, Sarah, that we kicked off our first show. I think it was good, and I hope you guys liked it. And please comment. And Sarah's going to tell you how to get to us.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us. Thanks for joining us today. Of course, you can follow us on Past the Wire TV on YouTube, pastthewire.com, and then, of course, Past the Wire on X, Instagram, Facebook. We want to hear from you. Comment, like, and share. And, of course, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.